this episode I will do something a bit different. First I'll start with a segment called Sitting with My Shadows, which is basically me just expressing what I fear and am worried about at this moment. And with this whole podcast or project that I started, I have a fear that this is all just my own individual ramblings coming from a very subjective personal place that hold no value for anyone else, because it's just so tied to my life, my person. And maybe expressing it and letting it out into the world will do more harm than good. Maybe instead of creating the space that I hope for, where things can be expressed that need to be expressed, maybe I'm just creating more darkness by letting it come out. Maybe I'm making things worse. What if we should just dance on, enjoy and in light? These are the fears that I feel while I'm doing this. But while I say those things, I can feel that while it holds maybe some sides to it that are true, it's not the whole truth, and it's not what I need. And maybe, surely, this space and this podcast is not for everyone, and there are people who benefit from a different approach and letting things be. I can feel that there are people who need to go deep and who need to bring things up into the light. I can feel it because I am one of them, and I do need this space. So going forward, I'm not even going to attempt to make this project into something that is generalizable or like open for everyone, because it's not supposed to be. It is open and it's meant for those who need it, who get value from it, and I trust that you are able to feel for yourself, whether that's you or not. Yeah. Okay. So now that we have allowed these shadows to come up and take their seat at the table, I'm also going to give a little introduction to this episode, because it's a bit different. I was laying down in my bath and I started feeling a flow of thoughts and ideas that wanted to be expressed that I couldn't. They wouldn't leave me alone until I just recorded them, and I decided to just record it in the bath. And now, afterwards, of course, again these shadows in me, this fear is coming up and feeling like this is all such weird ramblings and it's all very pointless. But it's also not. And this podcast isn't the place to go if you want to have very coherent and research rational arguments. It's a place to go to kind of flow with it and flow with some thoughts, feelings, sensations, and maybe feel into it in yourself, like how you relate to it. And I'm not gonna give you any maybe clear advice and answers. It's a space to float, to flow, and be, and let it all be. And there are times when it will go into more specifics, or I am still a person who has my opinions and they will color whatever I say. I will filter things, and that's fine. That's a part of a human existence. And in this space, I guess the attempt is to allow that experience to have its space, and also dance around with the opposites and the paradoxes and contradictions, and comparing these human dramas to a deeper perspective. This is a process of unfolding. Let's call it spontaneous and experimental dance. So, with that, I will share now my bathtub contemplations with you. Alienated was what I felt when I entered the adult realm, or at least when I opened the door and perceived a world that was built on concepts that I couldn't relate to and that were not in line with my values. We are often presented with the view of these young people being all careless and nihilistic, and their alienation being some kind of a measure of their immaturity, because they need to get with the program, they need to step up, becoming adults and continuing existing in the world that has been created for them and furthering it on. But sometimes alienation is the most sensible feeling. Feeling alienated is very sensible when you encounter a world that is not in line with your values. And when you stay and rest in this feeling of alienation, when you accept this dissonance, the difference, the contrast between how the world appears to be and how it could be, that's the first step to actually being able to do something different. If we deny our first moment of discomfort and alienation and try to push it aside, try to fit in, we're going to have it bursting out sooner or later. So my suggestion, as always, is to create space to stay in this alienation, in this dissonance to feel it and to fully embrace it and feel what it's about. And then, after being in this mess, in this dissonant experience, in this discomfort with not fitting in with the world that surrounds you, you can start to carve out a space. You can find spaces that are in resonance with you when you first know what are not, and you can make resonance. I felt like an alien. When I was a teenager, that was a joke, a running joke between me and my friends around the time when I was 16 and onwards, 16 to 19, I just related to that image. That, is it an archetype? The alien or the other? I felt like I came from somewhere else and landed on this strange planet, and I've gone through periods of time where I tried to become mature and be an adult in the sense that in the way that was presented to me from the external world. And it can be an interesting little game to play for a while, but I've come to accept that while I want to be in touch with the world and understand different aspects, perceive it through different perspectives, I think my role is to be the outsider. My role is to stay in these in-between places so that I can offer a way to be where you can view the world through both views or different views, different angles. And there's something about this, that this is what the void space symbolizes for me. The void is a nothingness, but it's also a everythingness, all encompassing, but at the same time not, because it's like, if you imagine the void, it feels like it's kind of permeating everything, but it's also just in between, in all the spaces in between. So it's not fully inhabiting anything, and at the same time it is. Another paradox, I guess. This void space is my home. It is my home. From the void space I can view different realms, both the human realm and other realms. From the void space I can try to bring forth a message of acknowledging the shared spaces that exist between all our constructions of opposites, the spectrum of it all. The void is what I have come to understand as the nothingness that is essential for everything to exist. But when I was a teenager and when I felt like I was an alien, I did have a lot of preconceived notions of my own, and I did attach to one side of the spectrum, or I chose one end of the polarity, but I often oscillated between them. I chose one side. I wanted to be only fully in my dreams, in my imagination, and deny rational thought, deny the value also observing the world from an objective perspective. I was all for subjective, personal, intimate. I was very proud of my own person, and I was really trying to create a style, underground punk. You get the picture. But even while doing that, I played around. I chose white as my signature color instead of black. I had a hot pink t-shirt with, what's his name? This square pants cartoon figure. Just for fun, I wanted to add play and spices of light into the darkness already back then. And I did appreciate playing the character of the very mature and responsible adult. As a teacher, my role was to take a step back so my students' learning could be in the forefront. It was an act of service, and that was also beautiful and right. And now I'm trying to respect both of these sides of myself so that I can approach the world as a whole person, as everything that I am, and sometimes nothing, sometimes in stillness or in a depressive state, connecting to the notion that nothing matters. I'm still oscillating between, and I will probably keep doing so. But the frequency is growing closer together. I can be in the nothingness only to be awakened to the everythingness, the beauty of life. Just a few minutes later, back and forth. It's a movement, it's a dance. I guess that's the way that both polarities can maintain their own worth. They are existing in the right place, in their own space, in their own right, and they should. Because when they do, there is such a space between them. They don't need to blend, they don't need to deny each other, they don't need to take over the other, because if they did, what value would they have if there wasn't the opposite to define or relate to them? I feel that I'm just saying the same thing that I have read and taken in from other sources. For example, one of my favorite works of an older life philosophy, Tao Te Ching. But maybe this is something that deserves being repeated in different ways, because the language is a slippery fish. It's a little dancer who dances in between of our concepts and constructs, and sometimes it builds them up into beautiful listening towers, and sometimes they crumble and get crushed, as they should be. My language and words are always only attempts to define the undefinable. That's fine. That's interesting. That's how it should be with these paradoxes. allow them to be paradoxes. Maybe my attempts to define or just describe are futile. Maybe they are pointless in a way. But they're also not. They can be both at the same time. I'm sitting in the bath while I'm recording this, and maybe I have to record it again or try to clean it out, but these were some thoughts and notions, sensations that came to me in the bath, and I felt like I could only capture them or try to hold them in my palm for a moment while being in this state. The bath water has a shape, but it's also shapeless. It forms itself around me. It doesn't take me over, but it also does. Much like the void. In the bath, I often feel like this water gives me a doorway. It opens a portal to these spaces in between so that they can be heard more easily. It is also like a little bit of a in-between space and shielded from the external world. The bathroom is a private space. For just being and letting the body relax. But the bathroom is also a space for doing our very most basic needs. The bathroom holds these opposites, the dirt and the cleaning. But I always feel like the bath cleans me in other ways than just the physical. Into the bath water I let go of my excessive mind's hold and let it flow in the water. Let the thoughts and emotions dissolve a bit and become nothing, floating in everything. I invite you to float with me and consider your own relation to alienation or the opposites in your life. What do you value? What do you attach to? What do you take on as qualities to attain, qualities worth inhabiting? And what repels you? What do you find yourself feeling alienated from? Let it all come and be with you now. Let it all float around you in the void. It all exists. It all holds its own worth. And it's all related to each other. You can exist in the void for a moment to observe everything. But as humans, we are creatures that are living in the world of everything. we are physical creatures with thoughts and emotions and habits and activities, and it's not wrong to choose your values. It's not wrong to choose one side to focus on. I think we need to do that because we have a concrete shape that needs concrete actions, but the concrete needs also need the opposite: dreams, floating, dancing with the void. Thank you for joining me for this week's dance on